I hate my iPad. Doesn't have enough storage on it to store these videos that I'm planning to put up, but I do have to keep in mind that people don't have the attention to listen to 40 minutes of me just gabbing away on some topic like what a podcast is. Um, you could get a much better description from someone else. Just know that I've written podcast generators, and all it is it's an RSS feed. What an RSS feed is a kind of XML file. What is an XML file? An XML file is just text that contains these things called tags in it that are arranged in such a way that a computer can easily extract the information, the useful information from the file, from the, and you could write it out very simply on a sheet of paper. You could use a pencil to write it out and then later on type it out. And you would type it into a note that you would probably store on your computer. And you could take this note or this file, this simple text file, and upload it. That is, put it on another computer somewhere else on the internet. Um, you could put it on a web server. All a web server is it's just a computer that spends its entire time um, answering calls from other computers to get information on it. And the information is represented as a bunch of text files. The web browser accesses um, a web server, and they have a kind of a protocol and handshaking. It's like, hello, how are you doing? I'm fine. I'm a web browser. Um, I need a web server. Oh, we got a web server right here. This is web server, and the web server says hello to the web application and says, um, "Can I have this page from your list of folders?" And it can represent, you know, each folder can represent a different web page, um, and it contains a thing called an index.html file, which represents your web page. And inside that index.html file is just text um, with these tags, which are just less than, greater than, um, with a label inside, and they encapsulate some information. And that creates a web page. An RSS feed is the same as a web page. It's just that it's not, um, it isn't for web browsers, it's for RSS feed collectors, applications that will go and collect real simple syndication bits and bytes, um, news stories would be in things you'd stick into an RSS feed. So you're probably wondering, why did I just jump from something? I was just using web pages and how you got your web browser and you access the web server to get a page. An RSS program will go to an RSS page that lists out the information in stories, and each story has a date on it that tells when that story was released. And the program that accesses the RSS feed, um, and why I call it a feed is because it's a feed of information. Each one of those stories um, has the title, the author, and the date that it was released, and that helps the program that's collecting the RSS feed on your computer or on your cell phone to determine if there's any new news that it needs to give to you with notifications. It says it notifies you that um, something happened in the Ukraine with the war, and so RSS was really in the beginning was really just for news organizations or for sites like Twitter to send little tweets of news so that you would get updated every now and on what was going on in the world, and you wouldn't have to go and look at various web pages. You wouldn't have to go look at the New York Times webpage or this. They would have these little RSS feeds on their pages that would let you use an RSS feed collector. And that guy would spend all of its time looking at the RSS feeds for all these websites to collect together the bits of information that you might be interested in that you could then click on, and it would take you to the web page that talks about a certain story. So RSS feeds existed about 30 years ago. A guy by the name of Adam Curry got the idea to include references to media files, audio files, video files, and his inclusion of just that piece of information on top of the syndication of stories that were in the RSS files or new data, or I mean news stories from news stories from reporters, um, updates, new news, new tweets. He decided to put a reference to a media file, and just by adding that, he created the concept of the podcast. The and what the podcast really was him writing a program that would then collect media files from an RSS feed. The new media files would then be downloaded to his Apple Mac and then copied over onto his iPod, and thereby creating the concept of the podcast. That's how it started. And it's been the same way ever since. It's just an RSS feed that adds a media file to each new story that has come along. For all the stories, it has a list of all the stories. And so, well, as much as is in the RSS feed, because some RSS feeds have all the stories, some of them only have the stuff that they've done in the last 3 months, but it's up to the program that you use to collect those stories together from all the podcasts, which there'd be an RSS feed for every single podcast, for every podcast show. The podcasts themselves, the individual shows, the episodes, would be just entries inside of that RSS feed. And each entry would have a reference to the actual media file, the sound file, which would be a strictly audio podcast, or a video file. And that's all they are. They're just video files or audio files. And they exist on a web server or on any kind of server, or whatever the RSS feed can access, what servers. It might be an only FTP server. It might only be it might be an IRC server. I don't know. It might be any kind of server of information, but usually it's a web server. And you give it a web link, and how does it know it's a web link? Because the very first part of it specifies hypertext transfer protocol : / the domain name, which is your server, / and the first thing after that is going to be your folder or for the actual page, and we know it's a folder if it ends with a slash. If it doesn't, then it's a page. And there are even web servers that will interpret anything that's past the domain. So this domain slash, so it would be like in my case, it would be um, uh, YouTube. It might be YouTube might have a web server that would offer my YouTube channel up as a podcast, as an RSS feed with references to all my video files on YouTube. Likely they don't, because they don't like people downloading video files. But you could possibly make a program that would do such, and I will tell you how to do that if you want to, and that's the program's called YouTube-DL, and it's a Python program that will download any video file off of YouTube, and it would just be a matter of creating your own little program that calls YouTube-DL to download the videos off of YouTube, and then put them onto your iPod or whatever, and or just write a PHP program that downloads from YouTube videos, or and then sends them as output to your podcast program. It would be kind of a complex task, and probably illegal too, but possible, very possible. And so podcasts are not anything. If you talk to a programmer, they're going to look at you like, oh, you mean an RSS feed that's got a media link to it. And he says, oh yeah, a podcast. I can get Joe Rogan and I can get all, and they're like, okay, so all you need is an RSS feed parser that has the capability of downloading media files from web servers. And you go, and they say, yeah, well, it would take me about a day to write that. Some of those guys are that good. They're just like, or they'll say, oh, I've got a program on hand that does that for you here. And, but to programmers, the idea of a podcast media collection thing is just kind of like, ho-hum, not really very interesting, even Twitter's like that to most programmers. Twitter would be like, anybody can make Twitter. Anybody can make Facebook. It's all it is blah, blah, blah. But once you start to write the software that emulates those programs, it doesn't. It may end up being a bigger task than what they thought. But it's easy to conceptualize exactly how things are done to programmers. So programmers see a lot of, if they understand a technology, then they know how to do it themselves. If they don't understand what it is, then they might be able to find a way to figure out how to do that, or they just completely don't understand, and they say, well, I don't know too much about that. And then to them, it might be complete wizardry, and they go, ooh, wow, this is doing this, But these days, programmers usually only said things about that when they're talking about artificial intelligence. They go, oh, wow, you got an AI thing that can recognize this from a video feed. But then they turn around and they're talking to Adam Curry, and Adam Curry's saying, I'm Pod God. I created podcasts. And you're going, all you did is just create a link to a media file inside of an RSS feed. yeah, I'm the pod god. You have me to thank for everything. And a lot of people would say, there are some people in the industry would say, yes, and he had help. And he doesn't want to reference his help. He's claiming he did it, but he also did it with some other people. And, he's just wanting a lot of representation. I mean, who's Adam Curry before he even got into podcasts? He was some personality on MTV, and before that, he was some kid that went around in his mother's car. I think he was messing with radios, So he had from a very young age an interest in radio communications, and so he would probably count as a nerd or a technical person that has understanding of radio communications and radio formats and things you learn in media 101 classes in college, and you know why you need to have station identification every 15 minutes to avoid FCC um, penalty, fee, or, so that you can give context to your radio show or something. Those are things that I would know because I took that in college. But there are people in the world who will take a lot of they will take a lot of credit for, and I've been guilty of this myself. They'll take a lot of credit for very simple things, and they'll want lots and lots of praise for it. And they'll eat up that praise because that praise gets them the capacity to make money off of being invited onto shows to talk about how they generated this entire industry of just really riding off, piggybacking a technology that already existed and adding a media reference to it. And by calling it a podcast, it gave it a buzzword that people would pass around, but have no fucking clue what he's talking about until you understand what technology he piggybacked to add those links to the media files. And so he'd be the first one, but he was the first one that gave you access to that. It would be just like me, and I have done in the past, saying I was the guy that really kind of made people understand what Blender 3D was capable of doing before anybody else. And I was talking to Ton Rosendahl, you know, getting email from, he didn't have to give me email, he did, and described to me how the Blender 3D program worked, and I shared with the community based upon stuff I had learned with Wavefront TAV, how Blender could be applied to create animations. I just didn't stick with it long enough, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not treating people better and being fucking arrogant. And if I had just avoided that, I probably would have been doing something else in the world. I'd probably been making computer animations, but maybe seeing is enough. I don't know. But if I keep talking, you're probably not going to want to watch this video anyhow. So I just stop.